Come, little children, I'll take thee away into a land of enchantment. Come, little children, the time's come to play here in my garden of magic. This is Scarehunter, and you're listening to Scarehunter Storytime. Many scary stories to chill your bones. Today's story is The Tale of the Demon Doll. So turn out the lights, get cozy by the fire, and be prepared for some scares. A man and his wife moved into an old house with their 10-year-old son and 8-year-old daughter. The house was built in the 1800s, and the whole family fell in love with the house. When they opened the door, the kids, Ron and Sophie, ran around with excitement. As he watched the kids run around, the man, Jim, smiled at his wife, Nora, and said, Looks like the kids are loving the place. I hope you are too." Nora smiled and said, "I sure am. I can just imagine all the parties we would have here." Jim nodded, and as they hugged, Sophie ran up to them and said, "Come on, Mom. You promised we could check out the attic." Nora chuckled and said, "Okay, Sophie, let's go." When they got to the attic, Sophie looked around with a big smile on her face. They saw dressmakers' dummies, lamps, a trunk full of old clothes, and more. Sophie went to a dark corner of the attic and, in excitement, said, "Mom, look what I found." Nora went over to see what Sophie had found. When she found Sophie, she saw that Sophie was holding a doll. It had curly black hair, body of cloth and porcelain, a beautiful fluffy pink dress, and eyes made of garnet. It had a few small crack lines under the clear glossy paint, but Sophie just loved it. Nora let Sophie keep the doll when she saw how happy and excited Sophie looked. As they went downstairs, Jim said, "What did you two find?" Sophie showed her dad the doll, and he said, "Wow, that's really pretty. You better take really good care of it, that doll. It looks pretty old." Sophie hugged the doll tight and said, "I won't let anything happen to her." Jim took a closer look at the doll and said, "Those eyes are interesting. What are they made of?" Nora said, "I think they're garnets, but I'm not positive. We can take it to someone who would know for sure." Sophie looked at her and said, "Only if I can go to keep her safe." Nora nodded in agreement. Everyone was so busy talking, no one noticed the doll's eyes glow and fade. Ron came in, and when he saw the doll, he said, "Really, Sophie? Aren't you a little old to be playing with dolls?" Sophie glared at Ron and said, "Then aren't you a little old to be playing with action figures?" Ron got angry and said, "Shut up." Jim stepped in and said, You guys aren't too old for anything, including being grounded if you keep this up. Nora nodded and said, Your dad's right. Now both of you knock it off. Later they made up and played with her doll and his action figures together. Then they went to bed. As Sophie slept with the doll in her arms, the doll's eyes once again began to glow. While the eyes continued to glow, Sophie opened her eyes and, as if she was in a trance, walked out of her room. Sophie, who was still in a trance, set up some thumbtacks on the hallway floor, then went back to bed. When she got into bed, she closed her eyes and the doll's glowing eyes slowly faded. When everyone got up in the morning, they stepped on thumbtacks. As they cleaned the thumbtacks off the floor, they wondered how they got there. The next night, the doll's eyes glowed again and made Sophie go downstairs. Jim and Nora heard a noise, and they went to check it out. The doll heard footsteps, and the glow quickly faded. Sophie came out of her trance and got scared when she saw that she wasn't in her room. Jim and Nora saw Sophie, and when they went up to her, they said, Sophie, what are you doing down here? Sophie, with fear in her eyes, said, I don't know, Mom. I don't know. The next day, they decided to hook up video cameras to see if they could catch anything unusual. They took the doll to an antique shop later that day to see if it was worth anything or if the eyes were real garnets. When they showed the antique shop owner the doll, she said, Those eyes are real garnets, and it's worth a lot. Wait, I think I've seen this doll before, but I can't remember where. Could you tell me where you found it? Nora told the shop owner about the old house they just bought and how they found the doll while they were checking out the attic. When Nora told her the address, the shop owner with wide eyes said, Ma'am, you need to get rid of that doll now. Just give it to me. Nora and Sophie were both frightened by the shop owner's behavior. As they ran out, the shop owner stood at the shop door as she screamed, Get rid of that doll, or you will all end up dead. Later during dinner, Jim said, Found out anything about the doll? Nora looked at him and said, Well, the eyes are real garnets, and it's worth a lot of money. We had to leave before we could learn how much exactly. Jim put his hand on Nora's and said, Did something happen at the shop? Nora looked at the kids and said, Ron, Sophie, I need to talk to your dad alone. Please go play. When the kids were gone, Nora said, The reason we left was because when we told the shop owner where we found the doll, her manner scared us. She freaked out and yelled at us to get rid of it or give it to her. Jim comforted her and said, She really does sound crazy, but you and Sophie are home safe. Let's just forget about it, all right? Nora nodded and said, You're right. It's over now. After an hour, everyone went to bed. Later that night, Nora woke up to the sound of ghostly giggling. She got out of bed and went to check it out. As she walked down the hall, she saw that someone else was also walking around. She followed the figure around the corner and saw that the figure was Sophie. she noticed that Sophie seemed to be walking in a daze. As Sophie continued walking, Nora whispered, "What is she doing up?" Nora became frightened when she saw the doll's head quickly turn to face her, eyes glowing brightly. When she saw a knife in Sophie's hand, she screamed and locked herself in the bathroom as Sophie began to knife through the door. Jim and Ron heard all the noise and ran out of their rooms. When they got to the bathroom, they saw Sophie banging on the door with the knife and heard Nora screaming behind the door, "Sophie, stop! What is wrong with you?" The doll quickly turned her head again, and the glowing eyes began to glow brighter. Sophie turned, held the knife over her head, and began attacking Jim and Ron. While Sophie was attacking Jim and Ron, Nora cried as she opened the bathroom window and climbed out. When she got out of the house, she ran off to find the antique shop and talk to the owner. She found the shop and began banging on the door. When the lights in the building came on, Nora was banging faster and harder on the door. The shop owner opened the door, saw Nora looking frightened, and said, "Hurry, come inside." She had Nora sit down and said, "The doll is in control of your daughter, isn't it?" Nora nodded and said, "If you can tell me anything about that thing, please tell me. I'm begging you." The shop owner nodded and said, "A few years after the house was built, a black slave got angry with the owner, and she decided to get some payback for all the mistreatment the slaves had endured. So she went out to buy things for a birthday party for the man's daughter and bought her that doll as a gift. When she got back, the slaves gathered in the woods behind the house and performed a voodoo spell on the doll. When the owner's daughter received the doll, she was so happy. She loved everything about it, especially the garnet eyes. Later that night, while everyone slept, the doll's eyes glowed. The daughter, in a trance, killed her mom and dad, then herself. Ever since then, any little girl who lives in that house and finds that doll will be put in a trance by it and do bad things until an entire family is dead. Then the doll will make the little girl kill herself. The door burst open and Sophie came in holding the knife and the doll. Nora and the shop owner ran out the back door towards the woods. As they ran, they saw Sophie trip over a tree root. When Sophie fell, she dropped the doll and the glow faded. The shop owner grabbed the doll, tied a rock to it, and said, "You better get out of here. I'll toss this in the river." Nora nodded and carried Sophie back home. The shop owner tossed the doll in the river, and as it sank, she said, "May you never darken anyone's home again." A week later, a mom and her daughter were walking by the river when the girl ran to the edge of the river and said, "Hey, Mom, look what I found." The girl held up a soaking wet doll with broken rope tied to it. Hope you guys enjoyed that story. And if you could share these or just let people know about them, that would be good, really good. Until next time, unpleasant dreams.